Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Creepy Tales and Urban Legends. I'm your host, the Nightwalker, and I'm pretty sure that anybody probably looks at the title of this video and says, "Really, do we need another video about Amityville horror?" There have been so many videos made about it, and it's like, why is this? Why does this keep enduring? Why do people keep talking about it? It's been over 40 years since the whole thing, you know, went down. Why is this still even such a thing? Why do people keep talking about making videos, documentaries, books, and everything else? And for me personally, I don't know why. I've always had this very interesting fascination with the Amityville horror. I mean, it's like I read the book and. It's like I always found the book was fascinating. Now, I mean, we'll talk about the truth versus the fiction and all that stuff, but as a kid, I watched the movies and things like that, and there's just so many things about it's like there's just so many ingredients to this story that makes it so interesting, you know. And I mean, pretty much the whole story starts basically on November 13th, 1974, when Ronald DeFeo Jr. Took a high-power rifle and he shot down six members of his family. His two sisters, two brothers, his mother, and his father. And then, when he went to jail, all of a sudden, all these different stories came out. Like one minute he was talking about that it was a mob hit. Another minute he was talking about burglars broke into the house and killed his family. And then eventually he got to the idea that what ended up actually happening was that there were ghosts and demons in the house, and they were talking to him, and he couldn't see them, but they were talking to him, and they were telling him that his family was planning to kill him and that he needed to kill them before they could kill him, and things like that. And that he saw a black figure emerge and give him the shotgun to murder his family with, and stuff like that. But I mean, that part of the story is pretty much true, but everything else you don't know. Then when it ended up, then when this whole thing really kicked off was a year later when the Lutz family, they move into the house. I know for people who already know the story, I'm not saying anything you haven't already heard before. So I'm just pretty much here to give my opinion on it. But so anyway, so like a year later, the Lutz family, they move into the house and they stay only 28 days and then they leave and basically just run out and left everything they own in there, pretty much just left with nothing but the clothes on their backs and things like that. And then what ended up happening was like this whole amazing just tale of what did happen, what could have happened, did this happen, did this person do this, did that person do that, and everything else. And that's what makes the story so incredible, and that's what makes it endure for all this time. Because and then you start bringing paranormal investigators into the whole thing, and then skeptics come into it, and then the Warrants come into it. I mean, it's just got so many ingredients. I mean, it's like as entertaining as these movies are, and as entertaining as this book is to read, honestly, everything about this story is really more interesting than just the movies themselves. And I mean, there are videos I've seen. There are videos and stuff where they're coming up with all kinds of almost, I want to say, like conspiracy theories about what had happened in Amityville. I mean, the pretty much the one thing that everybody could pretty much agree on was that you had Ronald DeFeo Jr. He was a bully. He was a messed up kid. He was doing drugs. He was into drinking and womanizing and stuff. He loved his guns, all this other kind of stuff. And then the father, Ronald DeFeo Sr., he was very, very abusive to his family. They lived in this beautiful house, as a Dutch colonial. They lived in this beautiful house. Like anybody would have loved to have lived in this house, And, the way he showed love to his family, his kids, was by, giving them money, giving them material possessions. So, I mean, these kids were pretty well set. Okay. They had like nice cars, like Ronald DeFeo Jr., he had a nice car to drive. He had a speedboat, he had all this other kind of stuff. But here was the problem. All that stuff came at a price, and the price was that he had to endure the wrath of his father, and his father could just blow up at any time, And there have been so many stories about his father just exploding for no reason. Sorry. There are stories about how, like people have told stories about how, like, Ronald DeFeo, like, they were sitting at dinner one night and his napkin accidentally fell off his lap, and all he did was bend over to pick it up, and then his father accused him of getting up and leaving the table without being excused. And when he said, no, I didn't do that, his father turned around and just, threw him up against the wall and just started beating on him, and then just sat down and ate his dinner like nothing happened. So that was a problem. Was that, the kids, they were privileged kids. They were getting money. They had, all this other kind of stuff. They were getting all the material possessions they want and everything else. So, I mean, they weren't doing too bad on that score. But here was the problem. When daddy got mad and wanted to whoop your ass, it was going to happen. And, the wife, she endured so many horrible things. And, there's even that famous story about how, she was downstairs doing laundry. The kids were upstairs playing, but they were getting too loud. She was yelling at the kids to shut up. Ronald DeFeo Sr. was mad because he's trying to eat his dinner and he wants to eat in peace. But, the kids are yelling. She's yelling at the kids. So he goes, and when she's coming up the stairs with a basket of laundry, he opens the door, just cold cocks her. And she falls down the steps, and he shuts the door and says, we can eat in peace. So, I mean, there's all these different stories and everything else, and one of the interesting stories too, is like, it surprised me when I heard of it. I don't know, I'm sure a lot of people who are interested in the story have already heard it too, but there's actually kind of a conspiracy theory, because you see, here's a couple of things. The night of the murders, okay, for one thing, the family, when they were killed, they were all laying in bed like they were asleep. There was no indication at all that they tried to get up, that they tried to leave the house, that they tried to fight back. They looked like they were just sleeping peacefully. And the thing is that Ronnie DeFeo Jr. went in there and he shot his family down with a gun that could be heard miles away. But here's the thing. The neighbors, nobody heard the shots. The family didn't hear the shots. Okay, the only thing people heard was around 3:15 a.m. that morning, where, the time of the murders, they heard a dog barking. And that's the only thing anybody heard. They said even people who, were like night owls, were staying up and everything else, they never heard the shots. Didn't hear anything. All they heard was just dog barking. That was it. Which, leads a lot of people to believe that either A, supernatural forces were at work and blocking out the sound, so that, the family couldn't hear, so they couldn't get up and defend themselves, or, and the neighbors couldn't hear, so they couldn't go and rescue or anything like that. Or, there's another theory too that, and, take this with a grain of salt. I'm just saying, it surprised me even when I heard this story that there was actually a story that, they were saying that even the people in the neighborhood, uh, you know, plotted the murder of the DeFeo family. That maybe that DeFeo Jr. didn't even really do the murders, but maybe the neighborhood, because see, here was the thing. In the neighborhood that they were living in Amityville, the people who live there, they have a very specific way, they're very particular about how they want their neighborhood. They have a particular way of, how they live their lives. They want everything to be peaceful and quiet. They want this kind of, like Norman Rockwell, beautiful neighborhood existence and things like that. And the DeFeos were, kind of counteracting against that. So, so that's actually a theory. I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying it's a theory that people have actually thought that, the neighborhood might have gotten together and decided they just had enough of the DeFeos and their fighting and their abuse and their outbursts and, all this other kind of stuff. And they just decided, you know what, it's time to do something about it. Let's get these people out of the way. Another theory is too, like they said, they think it was a mob hit because, they think that, Ronald DeFeo Sr., like his father-in-law had ties to the mob and stuff. So there are a lot of theories surrounding it, but really the most popular one and the most, the one that everybody accepts is just the fact that Robert DeFeo Jr. just went and murdered his family, and it's pretty much cut and dry. And he was on drugs, he's messed up and stuff like that. Okay, so, but yeah, that was, one of the things that makes it interesting, and and that raises so many questions, and that's the biggest question of all, even to this day. That's one of the things that makes the story endure is, you know, why didn't the family hear the shots? Why didn't people hear the shots? Why didn't anybody hear the shots and come running? Why didn't the family hear the shots and get up and defend themselves, or at least try to escape? That's a question that'll never be answered. Um, Another theory is too was that there was the relationship between Ronald DeFeo Jr., his sister Dawn, and there have been a couple of, I don't want to get too but I've heard a couple of little hints and allegations of even an incest affair between Robert DeFeo Jr. and his sister Dawn, which that I think a lot of that came from the movie Amityville 2, The Possession, which there is a scene of the brother in the movie is called Sonny, but at this point he's possessed by the demons in the house, and he ends up having incest sex with his sister. But anyway, I think that might be where that came from. But some people feel that there might have been something going on between these two, and then maybe the two of them figured that they wanted the luxury of getting mom and dad's money, and getting to have all the luxuries of life and everything else, but they don't have to put up with mom and dad being mean and abusive and things like that. So that's another theory too, and that's the thing, um, and that's the thing. If you believe in ghosts or not, this is one of those things you can sit here and debate it and talk about it for hours. Um, you might decide what you believe, and maybe not. I don't know. But then we come to the story of the Lutz family, and that just makes it even more intriguing. Um, and that's the thing. Like now, a lot of people feel like that. It seems like the common consensus here now is that the Lutz family created a hoax to basically capitalize off of the DeFeo murders, to write a book, to make money so they could get movie deals and this and that and the other thing. There have been rumors. I don't know if this is true. I wasn't there. But there have been rumors that supposedly even George Lutz on his deathbed supposedly admitted that the whole thing was a hoax and that it never happened. And, that it really was just a scheme that they were cooking up. But then other stories say that, till the day of his death, George Lutz maintained, no, this is the truth. This is what happened. My story, I'm sticking to it. And, uh, and that was kind of the thing, people were curious about why did they move in this house and move out 28 days later, and then you know um they just left everything they owned, and these people seemed genuinely scared and everything. And to a lot of people, even some of the debunkers, even they were sitting there like, well, if it was an act, it was a good one, because they seemed like they were genuinely frightened. But they did have believers as well. And so, they leave the house. Everybody's kind of really curious about that because, nobody would just up and leave their house and leave all their possessions, all their food, all their clothes, everything else. And the DeFeos are like, we don't even want to set foot on the lawn. Or not the DeFeos, I'm sorry, the Lutz family. They're like, we don't even want to set foot on the lawn. And so, and then they bring in, Ed and Lorraine Warren, who, easily those two are probably my favorite in terms of paranormal investigators. I always found them the most interesting, the most fascinating. Um, I know a lot of people have come out and said, the Warrens, they're full of BS and stuff like that. And it's hard to know. But I would say out of some of the paranormal investigators I've heard of, I would say that the Warrens are ones I would be I would be more likely to believe the Warrens than I would some of these other ones, like Hans Holzer. I mean, this guy, like, he watched the commentary on Amityville Horror, and it seems like he keeps changing his story a lot, or the details just keep seeming to be switched around. But the Warrens, I mean, they always kind of like, if they were liars, they were good ones because whatever they said, they stuck to it. Lorraine Warren, from day one until the day of her death, she always maintained, she said the line, I hope this is going into the house. She said, I hope this is as close to hell as I ever get. And, And they always seem like I said, if they were liars, they were good ones because at least their stories were consistent. Um, but anyway, so they brought in, news people. They brought in, and they started, they were talking about like the cameraman, I believe, was having chest pains and people were getting weird sensations and stuff. And then, a lot of people attributed that to just, you're in this house, murders happened here, these people say it's haunted. So, you're just creeped out is more likely what's going on. So, and then, then the whole thing started to take off that, um, that it turned out that George Lutz was going to work with William Weber because he wanted information about the house, and the Weber decided, that they were going to write a book, and the DeFeo was going to get money from the book, and George Lutz supposedly didn't like that idea, so he canceled it. So then supposedly Weber turned against Lutz, and then Lutz supposedly hired Stephen Kaplan at first to go in and investigate the house, and before he did, supposedly hit to Lutz. Kaplan's credentials didn't check out, so then he canceled the investigation, which got the Kaplans on his ass and everything else. So so that was the thing, and then there's that famous photo. You look up the famous Amityville photo. I really should have prepared better. I should have had that photo handy to show you, but there's that photo of, the stairway where you see that kid with the glowing eyes, peeking out of the doorway, and everybody's wondering, like, who was that kid? What time was that? When and where? When and how that picture was taken? Supposedly there were no kids in the house at the time. Was that even a kid? Was it a ghost? Who knows? Things like that. And ultimately, that's the thing. That's what makes the story so interesting. And that then Jay Anson, he was hired to write the book, and he wrote the book, and then he talks about stories about people who met. It seemed really odd, fates. People that he gave copies of the book to read and everything, like people dying and you know their houses catch on fire or their car crashes and wrecks and things like that, and all this kind of stuff. But over the decades, though, it has endured. It's endured through movies. It's endured through all kinds of stories. We all, if you're a fan of hearing about the Amityville horror, you know the details. You know that they went in the house. They stayed the 28 days. Supposedly, there was a priest. I believe his name was Ralph Pecoraro, who he went into the house, and he said that he felt a slap on the face and a voice telling him to get out. Which I remember as a little kid when I first watched this movie and that part came up. I admit it scared the hell out of me. But oddly enough, I think Amityville 2: The Possession, that movie scared me more. One day I need to review this movie, kind of explain to you why. But anyway, so there's all these kind of things, and Lutz saying that he would wake up at 3:15 every morning, and which was the reported time of the murders. He was always building the fireplace because he could never get warm. There's all those stories. The story that it was freaking people out about how close of a resemblance he really had, that George Lutz had to DeFeo. He looked so similar. It's been fictionalized. It's been kind of speculated what went on that last night, but they said, we're not even going to talk about that. And, but then he said something to the effect of like, well, we were in bed and Kathy Lutz, like she started to levitate off the bed and things like that and move away and, things like, and the kids, beds were rocking and all that. So it's, all different kinds of things. So it's hard to know what to believe. But overall, though, it's like, I know I'm taking about 20 minutes to talk about this whole thing, but that's just it. There's so much going on. It's hard to know, what is the truth? What is fiction? I think like I said, this is one of those stories like skeptics and, believers, they could sit there and they could debate this for a week. It probably still not reach a conclusion, but that's what I think makes it ultimately one of the most interesting ghost stories of all. It's just that there are so many things people don't know, when it comes to the DeFeo murders, how much did the neighborhood know? Did the neighborhood have anything to do with it? Did the mob really have anything to do with it? So was there really a conspiracy by the community to get out the DeFeos? That kind of thing. Were there ever spirits in the house? Apparently, no, because supposedly after George and Kathy Lutz, after they left the house, anybody else who moved into that house said, no, spirits were never a deal. We never had a problem with that. The thing that was a problem was, people coming up and messing with the house, like trying to take, bricks out of the foundation and stuff like that, trying to take, little mementos, people coming up and trying to, knocking on the door saying they want to come in and take a look at the house and all this other kind of stuff. And so they said that was really it. It's like people were more the horrible part of it. But, then so many other questions arise, like how the hell did, those people get shot with a rifle that could be heard blocks away? Nobody heard anything. The family didn't get up. There were signs, no signs that they fought back, no signs that they tried to leave. Um, you know, Autopsies supposedly reported there was no drugs or alcohol or anything in their system that would have affected them. Did Ronnie DeFeo act alone? Did his sister have anything to do with it? All that kind of stuff. The Lutzes, like they all had their stories. Um, there's the interesting documentary My Amityville Horror talking to Danny Lutz, the oldest boy of the Lutz family. There were stories saying that, well, no, it wasn't actually the house that was haunted. It was more the Lutz family. Supposedly it came out that supposedly George Lutz he had a really fascination with the occult and the macabre, and like part of the reason he wanted to buy that house was so he could go in there and see, and start dabbling in the occult and things, see if he could stir something up, and supposedly he did. And then after they left the house, they ended up having to deal with priests and things like that to have a stop put to the whole thing. So that's it. Also too, everything the Warrants said, or the Warrants telling the truth, are they lying? It's like at this point now, would it even matter? Because both Ed and Lorraine Warren are gone. So, but it's like, if nothing else, Amityville Horror, whether it's real or a hoax, whether it happened or it didn't happen, one thing you got to admit about this whole story is definitely one of the most interesting ghost stories ever. Just the whole controversy surrounding it, the lawsuits, everything. So anyway, that's the thing. I'm not here to say, what happened. You can make up your own judgment. Just, just thought I'd make a video talking about it. So if anybody took the time to watch the video, I thank you for doing it. I appreciate you for doing it. I honestly hope you enjoyed this video, this episode of Creepy Tales and Urban Legends. If you did, please like and subscribe. I'll try to get more videos knocked out for you. But until then, take care if you're out walking around at night, because I am the night walker, and you never know. You might run into me, so beware.